Disclaimer: The Minority Report podcast by Mic Bminor. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are mine and mine only, and do not reflect those of any affiliated individuals, organizations, or employers. This content is for entertainment and informational purposes only, so listen with an open mind. And if you don't agree, that's cool too. You ever notice how gentrification works? It's never random. First they send in coffee shops, then the yoga studios, then the rent devils, and the folks who built the block, suddenly they can't afford the block. And America runs the same hustle. We call it freedom, democracy, the land of opportunity. But what it really means is one group builds it, another group moves in, and somebody gets priced out. Progress, but only if you can pay the cover charge. MAGA says, don't steal our country. But listen, the whole country was stolen to begin with, you know? That's like the burglar calling 911 because somebody jacked his getaway car. And here's a deeper question. Do you care more about your freedom today than the freedom of the people coming after you? Because that's what we're really here fighting over. Not just who gets to sit at the table now, but whether there's even a table left for tomorrow. America's not just gentrifying our neighborhoods, it's gentrifying our politics, our history, our future. And sooner or later, if we keep this up, tomorrow's going to be priced out too. America loves to sell freedom like it's permanent. But the truth is, freedom today means nothing if it costs freedom tomorrow. What's going on with y'all? I go by the name of Mic Bminor, and this here is a Minority Report. This is the 6th episode of the Minority Report. We're now 6 episodes in. I'm honored. Here we are, September 2025. I am honored to do this, and as you can see, my background's a bit barren or whatnot. I'm actually in my new spot. I was finally able to move, and I am now residing in a new residence, and I am so excited to be here. Now, obviously, I plan on putting a dinner table here, but it cost so much money. I was 400% over budget for this move. As always, thank you to everybody who's watched the other episodes, whether you don't watch 1 through 5 or you just started at 4 or just started at 5 or whatever. The amount of people who's been pouring into this dream of mine, this pursuit of mine, or this goal of mine, man, it's been nothing less than amazing. And I really appreciate you guys for just rocking with me, sticking with me, and encouraging me. Of course, I got a few people I got to address, a few things I got to address while I'm on this, but it's been a quite amazing experience. Seeing this, come together. This whole thing has been amazing. I've gotten a lot of love. I've gotten a lot of hate. I seem every month to find a couple of subjects now. It used to be just one, but now I got a couple of subjects that really invigorates the crowd. If you haven't already done so, please do me a favor. Like, subscribe, follow, comment, share. Do your thug thizzle. You know what I mean? We got to do this. I want to take it straight into the headlines because the news cycle is full of folks trying to sell us freedom on credit. Quick fixes, flashy gimmicks, policies that look good today but leave somebody else paying the bill later. Let's get into those headlines, y'all. I'm going to just breeze through these headlines, you know what I mean? So, Trump deployed the National Guard to D.C. For optics. But 8 of the 10 states with the highest murder rates are red states, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama being 3 of them, okay? MAGA never wants to talk about that. They only want to bring up Chicago. It's actually been pretty funny watching Newsom pull Trumps on Trump. Now I don't know if he's going to win the presidential ticket or if he'll actually win a candidacy. I think he's a stronger candidate than J.D. Vance, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I will say for sure that it's been kind of ironic. He's been trolling the hell out of Trump, and it's just ironic looking at his base and his supporters and Caroline Levitt and all of them, really look at this. Or what's his name? Mike Johnson got on there, and they asked him, hey, Mike Johnson, Trump is saying all these things about crime and deploying the National Guard to D.C., but, he pointed out that your crime rate is 4 times higher than California's in Louisiana. And Mike Johnson said he needs to get off of there and govern his state. Really, Mike Johnson? Really? It's been funny. It's been enlightening. I don't think anybody really saw this coming, but whatever. Hey, I'm enjoying it. And the crazy part is he's trumping Trump, but he's not doing it the way Trump does. He's not saying nasty things about people. He's literally just basing it in fact and just saying, hey, you know, you guys are talking about California, blah, 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 and this, but you guys don't want to admit that, you know, a lot of these places complaining about California and how they handle their immigrant situation don't admit we're a donor state. We give way more money than the next closest state, which I believe is Texas, as far as income taxes and everything. So it's like, I think it's very refreshing to see somebody use Trump's tactics, but actually base them in fact. If it's really about safety, man, why not send a guard where the crisis is worse? Of course, we already know that, right? Trump keeps firing anybody who won't tell him what he wants to hear. He fired the person from the CDC. He fired somebody from the Fed. He fired, what's her name? Erica Tarfer, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that lady. They're trying to frame it as that they're not buying into his America First agenda. But really what it is that they're not fudging the data. They're not massaging his ego. And if you look at the cabinet meetings and stuff like that when they televise them, they go around the table and everybody's like, oh, thank you, Trump, for finally doing this for the American people. Nobody has done it before. And another person comes over there and tries to trump that person and say, oh, no, but you know what else you've done for the American people? And blah. It's pretty, you get it. Same thing with the 2017 tax cuts. He sold it as his big, great deal, right? And the reality, the deficit ballooned. Okay, inflation indirectly pushes many taxpayers into higher income tax brackets, a phenomenon known as bracket creep. Okay, so I'm so tired of that, man. The gimmicks and the politics. Now he's bragging about cutting taxes on tips. Reality, that benefit phases out once he's out of office. So workers get a sugar high today, but the crash comes after he's gone. So everybody will praise him, and then all of a sudden the next person comes in, albeit if it's like a Democrat, they're going to say something about that. And I know they're going to just come after me for this, but I'm going to just say it anyway. MAGA, you guys you guys want to complain about immigration? Look no further. Look no further than your first lady. Okay? She came over on a work visa. Then she got a green card. Then she naturalized as a citizen. And then she brought her family over, her parents over. And guess how they got over here, guys? Ding, ding, ding. Chain migration. The same process y'all are trying to get rid of. Your first lady is here because of it. You want to talk about the student visa situation? Well, that's how the Musk brothers got over here. On student visas, and they were on student visas for the longest. And then finally did everything else he had to do so he could stay. It's crazy though, huh? The president's family literally benefited from the same exact system his base calls a loophole. And that's hypocrisy so rich, it should be in the Forbes list. Timing matters, man. Remember, most policies don't even show effects for I think they say it's 18 months for most policies to really start to take effect and for you to really see stuff happening. All right. And by the time the truth comes out, politicians are already running their campaign on the next new slogan. All right. So it's just annoying when people talk about these things because, a lot of times when they pass these policies, they don't really hit for a while. You don't really get to feel these things or see what the effects of these things are. So that is part of the reason why a lot of times when it's coming to Trump, I preach, hold your horses. Let's see how this plays out. I got to push back on the Democrats now, okay? Because y'all do the same thing, all right? Don't forget Obama. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Remember that on Obamacare? Millions found out it didn't come to fruition. All right. Remember Biden pushed student loan forgiveness? Each time they got knocked down by the court. And I'm pretty sure he knew it was going to get knocked down, but it was just a talking point. All right. All these climate change folks, man, y'all preach green, but y'all take private jets to the freaking climate summits. Hypocrisy, right? It's not just MAGA, but both sides sell us the win now and hope we don't notice the fine print later, all right? It's really, really annoying, all right? So it's not about who lies more. It's about why we keep buying into these short-term gimmicks, knowing a crash always comes 18 months later. Speaking of gimmicks, let's talk about the biggest political hustle of them all, right? Rewriting history. Every time I bring up the Dixiecrats and the migration to the Republican Party, folks flood my mentions saying it's a myth, a fluke, it never really happened. Well, let's run the receipts because this so-called minor issue might be the foundation of how we got here, okay? Let's get into minor issues, right? Ah, boy, man, it's been an eventful month, okay? And as most of you guys know or don't know, I did all this work and I put it out. But one thing that got the people going, it really got the people going, was when I brought up the Dixiecrats and I said, hey, you know what? After the Dixiecrats fell apart, then they all migrated from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. And boy, they were like, oh, that's a myth and blah, 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 blah. Boy, oh boy, they got very agitated by me telling them that. So I came with receipts, all right? The Dixiecrats, if you didn't know, the breakaway party, right? Back in 1948, Southern Democrats walked out of their own party because President Truman dared to desegregate the military and push a civil rights plank. They formed the States' Rights Democratic Party, better known as the Dixiecrats, right? Their presidential ticket was Strom Thurmond of South Carolina and Fielding Wright of Mississippi. And they won four southern states and 39 electoral votes. Now, of course, nearly not enough to win, but that's what they want, right? These weren't just random rebels, though. They were governors. They were senators. They were congressmen. They controlled the South, all right? Here's some names, right? And when you guys are talking about nobody switching, they all went back to the Democratic Party. Yeah, a good majority of them ended up going back to the Democratic Party. And while they were in a Democratic Party, guess what they did? They fought civil rights tooth and nail all the way to the bitter end, okay? Strom Thurmond, we already talked about him. He was a Dixiecrat presidential nominee. He switched to the Republican Party in 1964. Albert Watson, congressman from South Carolina, a Dixiecrat supporter. He flipped Republican in 1965. John Bell Williams, Mississippi congressman, Dixiecrat. Later the governor endorsed Goldwater and Nixon. Fielding Wright, Dixiecrat VP candidate. He never rejoined the Dems. He lined up with the GOP. Mills Godwin Jr., Virginia Dixiecrat, became Republican governor in the 1970s. Harry F. Byrd Jr., Dixiecrat-aligned senator. He quit the Democrats and caucused with the GOP. James Eastland, Mississippi Dixiecrat senator. Later backed Nixon and Reagan. Walter Stillers Jr., Mississippi House Speaker Dixiecrat, lined up with the GOP agenda. Olin D. Johnston, South Carolina senator, Dixiecrat sympathizer, seat flipped Republican through Thurmond's coalition. Herman Talmadge, Georgia Dixiecrat senator, eventually endorsed Nixon's Southern strategy. That's just 10 examples of people who switched from Democrats to go Republican, or maybe they didn't completely switch, but they supported the GOP's agenda, all right? And most of that was because Nixon came with the Southern strategy, and he ran on the Southern strategy. The Southern strategy was basically a strategy so that they can start courting all the people who felt disenfranchised from the South. And that is when they started going from blue to red. Okay? That is how the Dixiecrats all migrated all these people from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. There's so many more people, and don't forget, they took with them their voters. They took with them their states over to the GOP. So no, it didn't happen as the Dixiecrat Party lost, and then they said, hey, you know what? We're no longer Democrats anymore. We are now Republicans. No, they took their time. It was piece by piece by piece by piece, and it happened between the late 40s and I want to say the 70s or the 80s or something like that when it happened, okay? That's not a fluke, guys. It's a migration. The South's realignment from blue to red. Here's how it went down. 1964, Goldwater runs against the Civil Rights Act, wins 5 deep South states. All right. 1968, Nixon's Southern strategy courts disaffected Dixiecrat voters with law and order and states' rights. 1970s through the 80s, Carter holds on briefly for a little bit. He only had 1 term, but then Reagan locks down the South for the GOP. By the 1990s, Southern governors, senators, and legislatures had switched to the Republican control. So the so-called solid South went from blue to red, not by magic, not by accident, but by a white backlash to civil rights. Now, there's another thing that people talk about, and that is, Republicans passed civil rights. Let's talk about it, okay? Civil Rights Act of 1957, introduced by Democrats Lyndon B. Johnson as Senate leader and co-sponsored by Republican Everett Dirksen, signed by Republican President Eisenhower, and it was weak, but the first civil rights law since Reconstruction, okay? Civil Rights Act of 1960, Johnson and Dirksen again, and it was signed by Eisenhower. Mind you, Eisenhower was a Republican, so when they say that it was a Republican, I brought it, Eisenhower was that Republican that was signing civil rights, all right? Civil Rights Act of 1964 was introduced by JFK, and after he was assassinated, Lyndon B. Johnson carried it across the finish line, right? Republican Dirksen rallied GOP votes to break the filibuster. Southern Democrats, a.k.a. the Dixiecrats, were the main opposition. Voting Rights Act of 1965, Johnson introduced it after Selma. Dirksen, again, rounded up Republican votes. It was signed by Lyndon B. Johnson. The Fair Housing Act of 1968. Johnson pushed it after MLK's assassination. Bipartisan coalition passed it. So the truth is, it was bipartisan. Northern Democrats and moderate Republicans got it done. Southern Democrats, Dixiecrats, fought it. Without Johnson's muscle and Dirksen's GOP votes, it never would have passed. Yes, Republicans in the 50s and 60s were crucial to passing civil rights. They did the right thing, and they do deserve credit. But by the 70s, the GOP pivoted. Nixon and Reagan saw opportunity in white resentment, and they leaned all the way in. That's how Republicans went from party of Lincoln to party of law and order coded against black folks. Let's not forget, Reagan at first was a Democrat. Ronald Reagan was a Hollywood star, guys. A lot of y'all don't understand that. Hollywood. Look into it. Now, let's talk about the Democratic role, right? Democrats were split down the middle, right? Dixiecrats in the South were pro-segregation, while Northern Democrats pushed reform. By the 70s, the National Party fully embraced civil rights. But let's not act like the Democrats are saints. They still voted for Iraq, they still fund ICE, and they still take corporate money. They talk about progress, but cash checks from the same lobbyists that the Republicans do. Republicans say Democrats were the party of slavery, segregation, and Jim Crow. True. But people can change. Democrats say Republicans abandon civil rights. True, but people don't always change, you know? So what is it? Do people change or do they not? You can't have it both ways, right? You can't not change but change, right? So maybe that's the lesson of civil rights history. Maybe some people can change. Maybe some people don't. The question is, will we, right? And while we're debating on who changed and who didn't, let's talk about what never changes, right? Money. Because at the end of the day, whether it's Dixiecrats flipping, MAGA crying foul, or Democrats selling hope, the real scoreboard is in the bank account. And right now, inflation, housing, and gimmick economics got everybody's wallet on defense. Let's get into it, y'all. Let's talk all about the Benjamins. All right, guys, let's play the what if game real quick, all right? Imagine Trump is president in 2009. Middle of the housing crash. His playbook. Tax cuts. Deregulation. Tariffs. Would it have worked? Probably not. Why? Because that's not stimulus. That's gasoline on a foreclosure fire. All right. The banks were failing. The auto industry was failing. Folks can't get cash out the ATM. And your plan is to cut oversight and raise costs? The collapse would have gone nuclear, guys. All right. Now, I can hear some folks in the back, you know, but hold up. Trump's tariffs worked. Didn't manufacturing pick up? Yeah, for a minute. About 450,000 jobs came back in 2017 through 2019 under Trump. But here's the part that they leave out. By late in 2019, right before COVID, this is before COVID hit, okay? Wasn't even 2020 yet. The U.S. manufacturing was already in recession again. Output was down, hiring was flat, tariffs gave us a sugar rush, and then the crash diet hit. And prices rose in the meantime. So sure, it was a win if you count paying more for cars and still a win. Other folks say if Trump had been in charge in 2009, he wouldn't have bailed out the banks. He'd have let the market correct itself. You want to know what correct itself would have meant in 2009? GM and Chrysler would have went bankrupt and millions would have lost jobs. It would have meant the banks collapsed and people can't get money out or couldn't get money out. All right. It would have meant that the housing crash cleared out homeowners while Wall Street bought up the scraps. We saw a little taste of that during COVID when BlackRock and private equity firms were buying up homes while families were getting evicted. That's the market correcting. It doesn't correct for people. It corrects for capital, and capital always eats first. Now the big one. Courts ruled Trump's tariffs illegal. Hey, let's talk about it. They just did that. It just bounced out today. All right. Does not prove the system works. Technically, yeah, But let's talk timing, right? He imposed those tariffs way back in January. The courts didn't push back until months later, right? They ruled on it and then they appealed. Here we are in August, and that's when the appeals court said it was illegal. But then they turned around and postponed getting rid of them until October 14th, giving the administration time to appeal to the Supreme Court, and they're trying to give time for the Supreme Court to weigh in. I'm not mad at that strategy, but all the while, we've been paying for the tariffs. Now, they'll turn around and say, hey, prices didn't raise. Yes, they did. We saw them raise. And as I said before, what people didn't understand is when people knew the tariffs were coming, what they did was they hurried up and they stocked up like crazy. Okay, AutoZone stocked up crazy. Walmart was stocking up crazy. All these different companies were stocking up crazy on things that would have been tariffed so that they can absorb it, hoping that at the end of the negotiation of the tariffs that they will come out with better deals and it will all work itself out. But the tariffs war has been waging longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. Okay, and they just keep pushing it and kicking the can down the road, kicking it down the road. And so now, because they don't have deals, all of a sudden now the Supreme Court is ruling, and now it's like, oh my goodness. Prices are already starting to rise. The economy is uneasy, and allies retaliated, and countries got strong-armed into deals they shouldn't have. By the time the gavel drops, the damage is baked in. That's not the system working for you. That's the system showing up late to a robbery, all right? And this is Trump's whole cheat code. Everything is an emergency. Tariffs, emergency. Border wall, emergency. Troops in American cities, emergency. The whole playbook is executive order, executive stunt, executive strong arm. And that's not conservative. That's authoritarian. Because once you normalize it, the next president, left or right, center, doesn't matter, inherits these tools. And when everything is an emergency, nothing is democracy. Meanwhile, look at the current picture. Folks are mad at Biden, sure, but America's post-COVID rebound, stronger than Europe, stronger than Japan, stronger than Canada. Our inflation peaked lower than Britain and Germany. But if now that Trump's back in office and doing so well with the economy, why is he beefing with the Fed? Why is he trying to cook the numbers? If what he's doing is so great, if immigration policy is what people wanted, why are all the lawsuits and protests and overturned cases happening? And why are most deportations just regular folks who cross the border, not hardened criminals like they keep claiming? Where are those numbers? We're talking about money, right? And the reason why I'm bringing up these tariffs and everything is because we were promised a different outcome. Okay? And we haven't seen that. And now we're also seeing, hey, guess what? By the way, you were supposed to go through Congress to apply these tariffs. And folks have been telling you, stop in-gaming around Congress. Congress controls the purse. But you know what? All these complicit Republicans, and to be fair, when the Democrats had control, they were very complicit in runs if there was an in run around Congress. But they're complicit because he's doing what they can't do. And then they get to hide, right? They get to say, hey, for instance, when they passed the big, beautiful bill, all those folks were talking about, unless we cut more spending and all the stuff, we ain't improving nothing. And you know what they turned around and said? President Trump said that he's going to cut more funding and I'm going to take his word for it. Congress. Y'all, this is a loop, man. One side breaks the law, the other side bends under the weight of expectations. And we, the voters, end up footing the bill, whether it's through tariffs, bailouts, or just plain bad leadership. That's the Benjamins talking. Because gimmick economics can buy a headline, but it can't buy stability. And stability is the real currency that we're all chasing. So that brings me home, literally, because stability doesn't just live in your bank account. It lives in your household, in your relationships, and whether your family holds together or falls apart. So let's talk about it. Women, voting, and what it really means to stick together versus breaking apart. Let's talk about family matters. Families are the backbone of a nation. And when families are strong, communities rise. When families break, everything follows. So, if we go all the way back to ancient times, right? Women were the keepers of the home, tied to fertility, spirituality, and survival. They held influence, but not power. Fast forward centuries, and by the early 1900s, women in most of the world were still locked in domestic roles while men handled politics, land, and war. Then World War II flips the script. Men leave to fight. Women step into factories. Rosie the Riveter? It wasn't just propaganda. It's women proving they can run the workforce. But when the war ended, the men came home, and suddenly women were told, thank you for your service, get back in that kitchen. That's how we got the perfect housewife image of the 1950s, right? Remember, frozen dinners, suburban homes, everybody smiling on TV? If you're white. You guys don't remember the TV dinner? Okay. Of course you don't. A lot of you guys are too young. But that's what happened in the 50s, all right? The TV dinner was like this way of them showing, hey, you know what? You could just throw this thing into the microwave and everybody can sit there and watch TV. The woman still has more time and more freedom because she doesn't have to slave over a hot stove preparing dinners all the time. She's back to being what women are supposed to be, homekeepers. Mind you, once again, this is only happening in the white families. This isn't happening in like the black families. We'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, that was the image that they were pushing, right? The bigger picture, right? In the 40s, while women were holding down the factories, black men were fighting wars abroad and coming home to Jim Crow. Dixiecrats were breaking away from the Democrats just to defend segregation, openly saying, we'd rather split from the party than share the country. Okay. By the 50s, America is booming. One paycheck could support a family if you were allowed into the system. Right. White families are eating TV dinners in brand new suburbs. The black families denied loans because of redlining. All right. At the same time, Dixiecrats are back in the Senate, blocking every civil rights bill that they possibly can. Then comes the 60s. That's where the contradictions explode. MLK is on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial preaching unity, and in that same decade, caseworkers are knocking on black mothers' doors, checking closets for men's shoes, because if dad lives there, the family loses food stamps. That's the man in the house rules that people are talking about, okay? Freedom on paper, sabotage in practice. Then here comes the 70s, right? Stagflation wrecks the economy. Factories leave the cities, and unemployment spikes. Divorce rates climb as women gain independence and society starts normalizing separation. White families cling to the suburban dream. Black families are left with broken systems. And the Dixiecrats, they start their migration to the Republican Party, setting up the politics where we're still living under right this second. Okay, zoom out. Black families took the hardest hit, but not the only hit. Okay, Hispanics families held on stronger, right? Big extended households, lower divorce rates, family first. Asian families, even tighter with cultural honor and duty keeping them intact, divorce almost unheard of, right? White families had the opposite story. You know, the nuclear family looked perfect in the 50s, but divorce rates exploded from the 70s to the 90s, all right? So the family breakdown is not just the black story. That's just an American story with the black community caught at the intersection of every pressure point. And here we are today. Families look different. Blended homes, single parents, LGBTQ plus families, chosen families. Some people say that fractured us. Some say it just redefined us. Okay, but now I hear folks floating the idea of going back to one household, one vote. That's basically rolling back to when only men voted and the family was expected to fall in line. On paper, it sounds like unity, but really it's just another way of saying only one voice matters. And history shows us where that got us. Make America great again. Excuse me. So maybe the point isn't that every family has to vote the same, think the same, or look the same. The point is when every member of the family is empowered, the family and the country are stronger. That's the real unity. Because whether you stay together or break apart, the real question is, are we building families that can adapt or families that just survive? And families don't live in isolation, right? They live in communities, under rules, under laws, under teachers and leaders who shape our kids just as much as the parents do, which brings us to the village. And right now, Florida thinks the village ought to come with a paddle. Let's talk about it. So Florida just passed a law bringing back corporal punishment in schools. And look, I know everybody got their hot takes on this, right? But on the contrary, let me just go and say this. I ain't against it like that. Well, as much as most people may think, okay? Now, let me be clear, right? I'm not saying just anybody should be able to lay hands on people's kids, all right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying schools should have to get parent consent. You want to opt your child in? Fine. You don't? Then your child is exempt. Straightforward. And it should come with limits. You don't spank high schoolers. That's just begging for a fight. And it shouldn't be every little thing. It should be for extreme cases, right? But I do believe there are times when physical consequences teach lessons that timeouts and suspensions just can't, okay? Now, some people will say, nah, giving the state the power to hit kids is dangerous. It'll get abused. And they're not wrong. History shows that black and brown kids will catch the worst of it. But that's why I said choice. Parents should have the right to say yes or no. And honestly, if we're going to criticize schools for stepping in, then we also need to stop demonizing parents who discipline their kids at home. You can't make physical discipline some forbidden taboo while the real world is out here still operating on it. Case in point, I got a cousin in jail. All right. Just yesterday, he called me for money because he owed somebody, right, inside. Now, to be fair, I try to support my cousin as much as possible. So when he told me, oh, he owes somebody money, I'm like, why do you owe somebody money? And he was like, oh, he gave me some food, blah, 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 and I was supposed to pay him back and yada, yada, yada. Anyways, he was asking me to pay his debt. I had already told him, hey, bro, I just moved. So you guys know it's recent because I literally just moved. I spent way too much money moving. I got to hold out. I got bills to pay at the top of the month. You got to give me some time. I can't just send the money right now. He told me okay at the beginning of the week. And then all of a sudden, halfway through the week, oh, you know, he's got a debt he's got to pay and blah, blah, blah. It's going to be bad for him if he doesn't do it. And I just told him, like, bro, like, I'm sorry. Like, and I hate to say this, but, bro, don't call me like that. Don't call me and ask me to pay your debts when I'm already trying to support you as much as I possibly can. Of course, you shouldn't be in there. We already know that, whatever the case is. But to call me and ask me to pay your debt after I just told you multiple times, I cannot give you the money right now. You got to give me some time. You know, it's just selfish. So he's like, oh, I'm about to go in here and fight him. Then I guess you got to fight him. Okay? That's how the world is, right? And now, mind you, that's a comparison to someone in jail. But what I'm saying is when you're in the world, right, you got to understand, like, in this situation, I didn't like telling him that, right? I don't want to see him get hurt. Right? But that's just real life. No timeout, no counselor meeting, no parent-teacher conference, just cause and effect. And if our kids grow up with zero concept of consequences, the world is going to teach them in ways way harsher than a spanking ever could. But then this is where I think about history. The Dixiecrats, all right? The Dixiecrats were all about discipline and order. When their party dissolved, most of them slid back into the Democrats or switched Republican. But the power structure stayed the same. School boards, sheriffs, city councils, they always use discipline to control somebody. That's the danger. It's not discipline itself. It's who's holding the stick and who they're swinging it at. That's why these conversations matter, because the names of the parties change, the jerseys change, but the control doesn't, okay? Meanwhile, look at government today. They'll debate spanking your kids all day long, but when it comes to housing affordability, crickets. Overcrowded classrooms, nothing. Safety in our neighborhoods, nothing. Oh, actually, I take that back. In the cities that didn't vote for us and that give us the most problems, let's put the National Guard. But besides that, we ain't going to do nothing about the actual cities with the highest murder rates. We ain't going to do nothing about that, all right? It's funny how the same leaders who want to decide how your child gets disciplined are the same ones ignoring the issues that actually hold families back. So here's the loop. Government thrives when families are divided and kids are undisciplined, because then you're easier to control. But when families are strong, when boundaries are clear, and when communities are rooted, that's when local government has to actually answer to the people instead of just disciplining them. Because whether you call it discipline or abuse, the truth is how we raise kids today says everything about the society we're building tomorrow. Okay, and that's not just a classroom problem, that's a world problem. Because the same way we debate how much authority a teacher should have over a child, we've got to ask how much authority a nation should have over another people. From Gaza to Ukraine to America's forever wars, this is the mother of all bombs, aka the MOAB. I don't have my sound effects. I thought I was going to have them, but then I moved. Hopefully by next episode. They say every revolution gets a counter-revolution. Civil rights gave us Nixon's Southern strategy. Obama gave us Trump. Iran threw out the Shah and they got theocracy. Afghanistan, Soviets out, Taliban in. U.S. out, Taliban right back in. Syria's Arab Spring, Assad came back stronger. It's a loop. You push forward and then the system pushes back. So here's a question. Are we addicted to the status quo? And let's be clear. The status quo isn't neutrality. Okay, in America, it's systemic racism. Around the world, it's authoritarianism. Gentrification isn't just housing, it's policy. They flipped the block. They flipped the politics. New rulers, new slogans, but the people who were there from the start still end up paying the highest price. And yeah, people who will say gentrification brings better streets and coffee shops, just like revolutions bring better laws. Progress does happen, but it's always messy. It's always contested. And that's why I sit in the center. I refuse to ignore progress, but I won't be blinded by it either. My divide isn't left versus right. It's progress versus people delaying or exploiting it. Now, I know I rag on MAGA. Let me do it some more, okay? Take MAGA. I don't think everyone at MAGA is racist, right? But racists do hide behind MAGA rhetoric. And a lot of folks at MAGA, they're not burning crosses. They're disaffected Democrats. Or what I like to call the new Dixiecrats. The old Dixiecrats broke away over race. The new ones are breaking over culture, gay rights, immigration, religion, economics. Some went to Trump. Some just stopped voting. So my stance on gay rights is very simple, and you guys already know. Your sexual preference is your business. Just like nobody should know that I'm straight until they see me with a woman, nobody should know that you're gay until you make it public. If you choose to share that, hand-holding, marriage pride, be outside with it, whatever, that's your prerogative, and you deserve the same protection under law. But where it gets messy is when disagreement becomes oppression or when acceptance feels like forced affirmation. The tension is where backlash lives. It's the same reason immigration sparks nationalist parties in Europe. The same reason Arab Spring movements got crushed. Fear meets change, and change meets fear. So the real divide isn't left or right. It's whether you see progress as something to embrace or something to fear. And until we stop letting party lines and ideological gangs dictate our choices, we're just going to keep running this loop. Every revolution gets a counter-revolution, but maybe the only revolution left is choosing for yourself. Because whether you call it discipline or abuse, the truth is how we raise kids today says everything about the society we're building tomorrow. Every revolution sparks a counter-revolution. I keep saying this over and over, all right? The system always fights to restore itself, whether it's in the streets of Gaza or the halls of Washington. All right, y'all. So, hey, I'm looking at my time, and I'm like 10 minutes shy of what I usually do. Feels good. I feel short, but I feel like I really thought I had really good notes this week. And, you know, what helps is when I actually read through my stuff, or I started practicing because this is so awkward for me. I keep saying this to you guys. This whole exchange of me talking to this camera as if I'm looking right at you and talking to you is very, very awkward to me, right? And so I've been trying to get used to this. And so one tactic that I learned was as I write out my script, if I go through my script, you know, and I just like practice it, sit here and actually I sit here, set up everything, and I practice. And when I practice, I go through everything and, you know, I stumble through the words here and there. And that doesn't mean I don't stumble as I'm recording this. I still got to edit it. I'm not at a point where I can go straight through yet. But I will say this. It is so much easier now because I practice. All right. So I don't know if anybody out there is looking to be a podcaster or whatever the case is. Practice. Write a script. Writing a script because when I was just riffing and just talking, I didn't really have any direction. Writing the script helped give me direction, okay? Because that's what I used to consider practice. I would read through my entire script after I wrote it. Because at first my script was literally just bullet points. Oh, talk about this, talk about that, boom, boom, boom. And those episodes, I would record an hour and a half, 2 hours worth of content and have to chop it down. Then I started actually just saying, okay, let me just write this out. So it takes, and it's part of the reason why it takes me a month. So I started writing everything down and going through everything. Cool. And so after that, I would just read through it and I'm like, oh, that's good. Okay, cool. But then when I started sitting down and actually talking about it, actually sitting here and like speaking, saying it, the muscle memory started kicking in. Okay. So now when I do it, it's so much more easier. So shout out to me for progress, right? Just FYI, I am going to Russia next week. I know. I'm so excited. Okay. Now, with me going to Russia, let me say this. I am going to completely wipe my phone. I was going to take a backup phone, but I done spent too much money. I'm not about to buy another phone right now. So I'm going to wipe my phone. And after I wipe my phone, I'm going to go to Russia. I'm not going to have TikTok on it. I'm not going to have YouTube. I'm not going to have any of this because I heard, I don't know this for a fact, but I heard that they may go through your phone. Okay? And if they go through my phone, I don't want none of the stuff I done said. None of it on here. While I'm in Russia, I won't be able to respond. So I am going to set up all my drops ahead of time. Okay? Ahead of time. If after the certain amount of drops you stop seeing me post, I'm probably in a Russian jail. Pray to God it won't happen. I'm gonna knock on some wood that it doesn't happen, but just letting y'all know, and y'all better rise up for me. As usual, also, let's make sure you guys do me the favor, man. If you haven't already done so, please click the subscribe button, click the follow button if you're on TikTok, all right? Please share this content with other people if you like it, whether you like a short or you like the whole entire episode. Please, if you're watching this as a short, please take the time to go back and actually watch the entire episode or at least watch the entire segment so that you guys can get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. If you're watching this, go to that episode, and if you look in the description, okay, there's two major things that I do in the description besides give you a description of what I'm talking about. All right, I give timestamps so you can cut through, and number two, I fact check. So if I say anything incorrectly in one of these, I will put my correction in that. Sometimes I say it the wrong way, and if I say it the wrong way, I correct myself. All right, I usually fix it in the short, but then I correct myself in the comment so that you guys can see, like, I'm taking accountability. All right, I'm not perfect, okay? But anyways, share, subscribe, follow, like, comment. Keep the comments are so important, guys. Thank you so much for all the comments. I don't care if you don't like what I'm saying. The comments really help discussion. I just ask that you, when you comment, you have an open mind to agree, and you also have an open mind to disagree. Okay, and that you don't be disrespectful. I'm not afraid of it. I'm going to let it post. I'm going to let everybody see how much of a douche you are. And trust me, I ain't going to just sit there and cry. I got some snarky remarks to come back. I don't play that. Okay, so we started tonight with gentrification, right? Not just the buildings, not just the coffee shops, America itself getting flipped. One group builds the culture, bleeds for it, dies for it, and somebody else moves in, paints over the murals, and calls it progress. MAGA says, don't steal our country, but y'all literally stole a whole continent. Now you mad at somebody stealing a Walmart job? Here's another one. That's like the burglar calling the cops because somebody jacked his TV during the getaway. I got more of those. I don't know if y'all like those, but, you know, dad jokes, sure. They tell us, get over slavery. But in the same breath, they want to remind us the Democrats used to be the party of slavery. So which is it? If people change, then the party switch matters. Republicans inherited that baggage. And if people don't change, then stop telling us to move on, because my people's trauma isn't a history book to close. It's bloodlines still paying interest. Families still torn apart, opportunities still redlined, wealth still stolen generation after generation. We're not living in the shadow of slavery. We're living in its receipts. Student loan debt, housing prices, policing, healthcare, all marked up with the same red ink. And meanwhile, Democrats, they're out here canceling folks for tweets from 2008 like Twitter was the plantation. They say, we're the moral high ground, right, as they vote for war budgets and drill baby drill, just in renewable packaging. Red or blue, it's the same hustle. A short-term lease with long-term consequences. Because America keeps gentrifying itself. Politically, socially, economically. We just keep pricing out the very people who built the block. The folks who bled for freedom get told, sorry, can't afford to live here anymore. So here's the truth. Maybe some people can change, for better or for worse. Strom Thurmond did. The Dixiecrats did. Parties did. Whole states flipped. But the question is, will America change where it counts? Will it change for the families that keep paying the bill, or will it keep flipping the neighborhood, raising the rent on our freedom until tomorrow can't afford to move in? Final words. Tom Artyom Alexandrovich. Look up that name. I'm going to put the name right here. Look up that name. Read up on it. I go by the name of Mic Bminor. This was a Minority Report, and the mic has been dropped.